So many women have said to me, oh my gosh, I have to watch every single piece of food I put into my face, otherwise I'm going to gain a ton of weight. And that is no way to live, my friend. At least that's no way that I want to live, and I don't think that is any kind of way that you want to live. Welcome to the Biking Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Smith, and I lost 50 pounds riding my bike by focusing on what my body can do. Now, I teach other women how to do the same. I am obsessed with completely flipping the script on weight loss so that we can work out to feel good and feel strong. If you are ready to stop dieting, learn how to appreciate your body, and have fun riding your bike, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Biking Wellness Podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you today, and I cannot wait to dive into this week's topic. This week, we're going to be talking all about why planning your meals is so important if you want to lose weight biking, and why I will never ever tell you to count calories, because I just don't think it's useful. I know that so many people say calories in, calories out. That's all you need to do if you want to lose weight. And while on some level that may be true, let's face it, it just never seems to work out that way, right? You know, we count our calories, we put everything into an app, we think we're doing so well, and then life happens. Or even worse than that, we're counting our calories, we're putting everything into an app, we're doing everything right, and we do it week after week after week, and we don't lose weight. And it's so demoralizing. So in this week's episode, we're going to talk about why having a simple plan for your meals is absolutely the way to go. This is a hill I will die on. It is how I lost 50 pounds riding my bike, and it is how members in my community and members in my program lose their weight riding bikes too. So let's just jump right in and talk about this. I'm so excited. I truly can't wait. Biking weight loss is simple, and we have a tendency to overcomplicate everything related to weight loss, because that's what the diet industry has always told us to do. It's told us that we have to eat certain foods. It's told us that we have to count calories, carbs, macros, all the things if we want to lose weight. And so, like you, that is what I did every single time I tried to lose weight. Up until when I lost my 50 pounds for the last time, I was counting calories. I tried multiple different websites, programs, apps, but fundamentally they all kind of focused on counting calories and making sure that that calories in, calories out number was in a deficit. Now, is that in and of itself terrible advice? No. However, if when you do that, you don't get results, it gets really frustrating really fast, because it's really complicated and it takes a lot of time and it's really hard. So it just never stuck for me. And I know that for so many women, it just doesn't work. It just isn't sustainable long term for most people to put every single piece of food they put into their mouth into an app. I lost 50 pounds riding my bike. I didn't count a single calorie, and I did it by making a very simple plan for my meals every day. And today I want to talk about why that's so important and how it's different from counting calories, because I know that in the back of your mind, you might be thinking, well, how is that really any different? If I have to put together this meal plan, I'm still putting a lot of effort in. I'm still going to be demoralized if it doesn't work. And the answer is no, it's actually not a lot of effort. It's actually really, really easy. And it only takes 5 minutes a day. Let's talk about why counting calories doesn't work and why this meal plan does. As I mentioned already, counting calories is tedious. It's exhausting. You have to be putting every single piece of food into your mouth that you eat into an app. You have to be estimating how much of every single food you're putting into the app. And what can happen is a couple of things. One is that you can start to become obsessed with measuring food, with thinking about food, and you spend so much time focused on food. And it's exhausting, and you can get really overwhelmed, and you can give up. So that's one reason why I think that it can be a really big problem. The other reason why that I think it's a major problem is that it does not encourage you to listen to your body, to think about what kind of fuel your body's going to need, and to make sure that your body gets the fuel that it needs when your body is screaming in your face that it is so hungry and that it wants to eat. It teaches you to kind of ignore that. It teaches you to say, oh, well, I have already had my allotted amount of calories today, or I don't want to eat anymore today, so I shouldn't eat anymore today because it says that, I can't eat anymore today. You start to get really in your head and spend so much time thinking about food. And nobody really ultimately wants to live that way. So many women have said to me, oh my gosh, I have to watch every single piece of food I put into my face, otherwise I'm going to gain a ton of weight. And that is no way to live, my friend. At least that's no way that I want to live, and I don't think that is any kind of way that you want to live. So you start to get really disconnected from your hunger cues, from what your body's telling you, from, oh my gosh, I have a big ride today. I want to make sure that I get some serious fuel in before my ride. Or, I had a really big ride last night and now I'm super hungry today. That's the other huge problem I have with calorie counting, is that a lot of times you're given a certain allotment of calories for a particular day, and it might not take into account what you were doing yesterday. So it might not take into account the fact that you had a really hard ride in the evening yesterday. You came home, you weren't really hungry, you went to bed, you woke up, and now you want to eat the whole house, but you aren't really riding today. So if you're in an app that's counting calories, it's going to say you only have X number of calories to eat. And you're going to feel like a failure because you're so darn hungry that you end up eating your face off because you were only supposed to eat X number of calories. I don't even know, was it 1,500, 2,000, whatever. I'm so far removed from it. I don't even know what the numbers are anymore. And in that situation, you can feel so incredibly down on yourself because you're not understanding why you want so much more food. It also doesn't take into account hormonal fluctuations and changes. Calorie counting doesn't take into account that you might have your period, or that you might be in your luteal phase, or that you might be in perimenopause or menopause. It doesn't really encourage you to listen to your body. So that is why you will never hear me say that you should count calories, and I will always say you should listen to your body instead. The next thing that I want to talk about related to having a plan, a simple plan for your meals, is that it completely removes the guesswork from food. If you're in the habit of being unsure throughout the day where your meals are going to fall and what you're going to be eating for those meals, you might be spending an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out what your plan is for breakfast, what your plan is for lunch, what your plan is for dinner. You might end up skipping meals because you don't have a plan, or because you didn't make a plan for when you were going to eat that day. Or you might end up overeating because there are multiple food opportunities throughout the day that you just don't want them to pass you by. So having a plan completely removes all this guesswork. So this is what it looks like. You wake up in the morning and you spend about 5 minutes saying, this is what I'm going to have for lunch. This is what I'm going to have for breakfast. This is what I'm going to have for dinner. These are going to be my snacks. This is going to be my dessert. That's it. We aren't talking about measuring food. We aren't talking about trying to figure out how many calories that is. We're just making a plan so that we use the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, when we are fresh, before we are in the dregs of the day, and that's helping us to decide what it is that we're going to eat. When we make these decisions from the rational part of our brain before our day gets underway, we are so much more likely to make decisions that are going to fall in line with actually achieving the results we want and achieving our goals. This is going to save you time. It's going to save you energy, and it's going to save you so much mental space throughout the day. You're going to have the energy to do the things that you want to do without being super preoccupied with food. I know that in the past, I would just kind of wing it. I would wake up in the morning and I would grab whatever there was for breakfast, or I would stop at the Starbucks on my way to work, and I would throw a bunch of things into my lunch bag for lunch, not really thinking about what my body wanted, what my body needed. Then while I was at work, I would be thinking about, oh my gosh, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? I would stop at the market on the way home to pick up whatever I needed. I was going to the grocery store every day, and I was just so preoccupied with food, and it was exhausting. So that's one way that this can be problematic. Another way that it can be really problematic for women who like to be active and ride bikes is that it does not allow for us to necessarily fuel properly for our rides. So for example, for many, many years, I led a group ride on Wednesday nights for women. And it was so important that I ate throughout the day so that I had the fuel that I needed to spend 2 hours riding my bike in the evening. And I remember I was riding with a friend and she was not necessarily feeling super strong. I asked, I said, well, what did you eat today? And she said, well, I had a salad for lunch. And I said, well, okay, what was in it? When was it? And pretty much the conclusion we came to was that she just hadn't eaten enough. She hadn't eaten enough for lunch. She hadn't eaten prior to the ride, because it's important, if you're going to be doing a hard effort, especially, that you have something to eat an hour or so before a ride. Like kind of a carb protein combo is ideal. So when you don't plan for that in advance, you might find that you are really sluggish on the bike, and you might get down on yourself thinking that you're not a strong rider, all of those things, when the reality is you just didn't have enough food before the ride. That's it. So planning our meals in advance takes all of the guesswork out of that and makes it so that we can fuel our bodies for what they need to do during that day. Another reason why planning is so helpful is that it gives you that baseline for what you have decided you should be eating that day. So that when certain things arise as the day goes on, like for example, there's a bunch of food in the break room that you weren't expecting, or when you are super emotional at the end of the day, it gives you that opportunity to just take a pause and make a decision that you think is going to be best for you. So when you've planned your meals in advance and hey, I just had a really healthy breakfast. It fuels me through the morning. Yes, there's donuts in the break room, but I don't need that donut to fuel my body today. And I know that that donut is going to make me feel sluggish and make it hard for me to get through my day. So I can take a pause and say, hey, this donut isn't in my plan. I don't think that this is the best choice for me right now. And that gives you a baseline to not eat the donut. Now, you might do all of that mental chatter. That isn't really chatter. That is actually, useful thinking. You might go through that whole spiel in your head and then say, but I really freaking want the donut, and eat it anyway. And that's okay. But you are going to do it knowing that it wasn't in your plan and that it might make you feel a little sluggish and that it might not be the best choice. But having a plan gives you the opportunity to at least have that conversation with yourself. And then after you make that decision to have the donut, you'll notice how you feel. And maybe next time you'll make a different one, because this whole idea of planning our meals gives us the opportunity to really play the long game and really understand that weight loss is not a temporary fix. It is a long-term solution, and it is going to solve the problem forever. So when we start to give ourselves the tools to make these choices and make these decisions, what invariably happens is that more often than not, we make ones that actually align with our goals. So you can ask yourself also, am I even hungry? Am I hungry for this donut? I had a great breakfast. I'm not even hungry. I'm going to eat a donut. It's going to make me feel sluggish. It might taste good in the moment, but it's not going to feel great after. So maybe I'm just going to skip it today. So those are some things to kind of think about, The other thing that you also want to keep in mind is the idea of just emotional eating. If at the end of the day you get home and you haven't fueled your body properly throughout the day and you've had a bad day, you are so much more likely to overeat than you are if you have fueled yourself properly throughout the day. So for example, I always plan an after school snack for me. I will make sure that I have kind of a meat stick. It's usually a turkey pepperoni stick and some kind of carb. Usually it's Doritos, honestly, because I just love Doritos and I like that they're a part of my plan every day. It's something like that. And that keeps me from coming through the door ready to eat my face off and ready to dive face first in the pantry, especially if it's been a hard day. When you have kind of this plan in place, you're so much more likely to make decisions that feel good for both, your progress and feel good in your body. The next reason why I absolutely love planning meals is because it helps you really figure out what works for you and what doesn't. So it gives you this opportunity to kind of test and find out what foods feel good in my body, what foods fuel my body, what foods don't, what foods kind of make me feel bad, what foods keep me on the toilet longer than I really want to be on the toilet, or don't help me, be on the toilet. Whatever it is that you are feeling kind of in terms of your body and in terms of what works for you, that is so helpful when you have a plan. When you have a plan, you can look back and say, oh, I tried this, it didn't really work. This is how I figured out actually that I needed to eat more on not just the day of my ride, but the day after my ride too, and not feel bad about it. Because what would happen before I figured all of this out was that I would not understand why I was so freaking hungry the next day and why I was overeating left and right. And it was because I was not planning enough food for myself on that day after a really hard ride. And I was beating myself up over something that was just my body saying, hey, Stacy, you need to be eating a little bit more food. So that's one other thing that is so helpful about having a plan is that it helps you figure out, what works and what doesn't. It also helps you figure out, if you find yourself overeating at the end of the day, if you find yourself emotionally eating, it gives you kind of that baseline for asking, why? What was happening? What was going on? Did I plan enough food? Was I really truly emotionally eating, or was I also really freaking hungry? And I maybe didn't make the best food choices and maybe I ate too much because I didn't plan enough food for myself before that. So those are all things that you can kind of figure out. You can kind of test and find out what works for you when you plan your meals. The last reason why I think planning your meals is absolutely the way to go if you want to lose weight riding your bike is because it makes it so easy to try again. Every single time I tried to count calories or carbs or macros or all of those things, I would get so overwhelmed when I screwed up. And I would look at, how I started off really strong and I had a few, for me, it was only usually a few really good days. If I was lucky, I would have a few really good days where I planned my meals, I hit my calorie goals, I hit my macro goals, and I was feeling really good. And then life would happen. Maybe I wasn't able to prep all of the food the way that I had been the previous days, or I wasn't able to plan, because that's the other piece of it, is that a lot of times all of those apps that have you count your calories don't actually have you think about in advance what you're going to eat. It's more like once you've eaten it, you put it in there, and then you can find that, oh my gosh, I've eaten too much, I haven't eaten enough. And again, you're just kind of hyper focused on those numbers. And you're not even necessarily figuring out what is working for you, what isn't, what feels good in your body. You're ignoring your hunger cues. You're just going off of some sort of app or algorithm or something somewhere that somebody told you without thinking about how that food actually feels. When you make a quote unquote mistake with a meal plan, it's so easy to try again. It's not this demoralizing thing where you feel like you have to start all over and start plugging a bunch of things in an app. No, it's just, next morning when you wake up, you make a plan. And then you reflect and you see, you can ask yourself like, hey, was I able to stick with the plan? Was I not? If I wasn't able to stick with the plan, why not? Did I not plan enough food for myself? Or did I not make sure that there were healthy options available to me when I possibly wasn't making the best decisions? This is all a process, my friend. It is a simple process to figure out what works for you, what feels good for you, how you can make sure you have the energy to ride your bike, to move your body, and at the same time, also make sure that you're not eating food when you really don't need it. So every single time when you're making your plan, you can ask yourself, what kind of food do I need? What kind of food do I want? What makes sense for me? And when you get in the habit of building momentum, of following the plan and kind of reassessing every day, just in those 5 minutes, it does not take a lot of time, then you are so much more likely to achieve your goals. Let's just recap here really quickly, because I know I just went through a lot. Again, it was 20 minutes, but it was 20 minutes of, solid advice. So let's just really quickly recap all of these ideas together. First of all, I advocate for making a simple plan over counting calories, because calorie counting is complicated, it's exhausting, and it disconnects you from how you feel about your body and how food is feeling in your body and whether or not you actually have the energy you need to go about your day. Number 2, a plan totally removes the daily guesswork and just basically frees up your mental energy. So you aren't constantly having to think about what I'm going to be having next. Is it a healthy choice? When you take 5 minutes at the beginning of the day to decide what you're going to be eating to fuel your body and what you're going to be eating for pleasure, because there is a place for everything in your plan, then you are so much more likely to be able to actually follow the plan. Next, number 3, it helps you make decisions before your emotions take over. It gives you that opportunity to take a pause and ask the question, is this on my plan? Is this not on my plan? Is this going to fuel my body? Or am I just eating this because it's here? Do I actually even want this? Am I actually hungry? It gives you that opportunity to take that pause. Next, number 4, you have the opportunity to kind of test and find out what does and does not work for you. You get that opportunity to reflect on your plan, ask if it worked, ask if it didn't, and then figure out why, instead of it making it this big thing and making you feel like a failure. Which brings me to my last point, number 5, is that it gives you this kind of sustainable, flexible framework to keep going even when life happens. You don't feel like you were this big, huge failure because you didn't follow your plan one day, but because you're just like, I can test and find out, and that didn't work for me. Let me get curious about it. Let me see what does. Okay, so I hope this episode was as fun for you as it was for me. I absolutely love planning my meals. And this is coming from someone who used to love to fly by the seat of their pants. When I started to get serious about just thinking, for 5 minutes a day, what am I going to eat today? What am I going to have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks? Making that decision before the day gets underway made it so much easier for me to make decisions that would be consistent with my weight loss and my cycling goals. Losing weight doesn't have to be rigid. It doesn't have to be restrictive. It doesn't have to be miserable. It can be easy. It can be simple, and it should be fun. It should be fun to kind of figure out what's working for you and what isn't. Just try it. Okay. So give yourself a week. Try planning your meals for a week. See how it works. See how it feels, and see how it ends up changing everything. Just see how easy it actually is. You've got this. You can absolutely do this. I believe in you. I'm here for you. I am cheering you on. Every step, every stroke of the pedal, you are absolutely going to be able to make this work. I know this for you. And even if you don't believe you can lose weight riding your bike, let me just hold that belief for you right now, because I know that you can. If this episode was helpful to you, I would absolutely love it if you haven't done so already, if you could follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts, rate it, review it, share it with a friend if you have a quick minute. The more women who find this podcast, the more women will feel supported and loved on their biking and weight loss journey. And it truly means the world to me that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. I cannot wait to chat with you again next time. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Biking Wellness Podcast. Be sure to head on over to sassy.com/guide, SASCY.com/guide, to get my completely free Lose Weight Biking Quick Start Guide so that you can get started with simple, doable weight loss today. That's SASCY.com/guide.